Hey guys, I'm Jimmy with One Road. Today we're giving the 2003 Chevrolet Suburban a little bit of a lift by installing these torsion keys made by Suspension Maxx called MAXXCam. These torsion keys are unique, and you can see they actually have an internal cog. If you look closely, there is letters on the cog, and there's also numbers that go around the outside of the torsion key there. And by reading the directions, you can dial in exactly the amount of lift that you want. Now, as with most trucks, this thing has a little bit of a rake on the front end. In order to check the height, what we're gonna do is measure from the floor to the bottom of the fender well. We're just gonna take our tape measure and go ahead and place it on the center line of the tire and measure up to the bottom of your fender flare. And in this case, we're sitting exactly at 35 inches. Now, if we do the same thing to this rear, we're at the center line of the tire, and in the rear, we're at 36.5, literally exactly. So we're gonna go ahead and call it, that's an 1.5 inches of front end rake, and I don't want that. I recently put this new set of wheels and tires on the Suburban, and I figured I needed to finish the look by raising the front end just a little bit. One thing to note here, other than your standard jack and jack stands, you're gonna need a specialty tool to complete this job. I went to my local AutoZone and was able to rent these tools. You can see this one here is called a GM Torsion Bar Unloader, and this one here says the same thing, GM Torsion Bar Unloading Tool. If we go ahead and open it up, you can see exactly what this tool looks like. Now, while this thing looks kind of like a C-clamp, you don't ever want to attempt this job with a C-clamp. C-clamps aren't nearly as strong, and this tool has been designed specifically for this job. Okay, so there's one thing to show you. If we take a look deep inside this wheel well, you'll see the upper control arm. Now, this is the front side of it, and there actually is a stop. This stop is meant to keep the suspension from articulating too low. This is a problem that a lot of people run into when they overcrank their stock torsion bars. You do have to pay attention to the gap here. You clearly can't crank your torsion bars to where it's sitting on the bump stop. You can see, because our truck is jacked up and on jack stands, the wheel is fully articulated and therefore resting on the bump stop. You always want there to be a pretty decent sized gap there, maybe enough to slide your pinky under, or a pencil. Now that the vehicle is fully supported using 2 jack stands, I have this jack stand as my main and this jack stand as my backup. We can now climb underneath the vehicle. Looking underneath the vehicle, you can see our torsion key. This right here is our stock torsion key from the factory. This right here is our fine adjustment bolt, and this piece here is our lock. This lock keeps the torsion key from fully rotating, and this adjustment bolt lets you adjust the height and ride quality as needed. So the first thing we're gonna do is take out this adjustment bolt. Now, this adjustment bolt is an 18 millimeter, and I'm just gonna attempt to use my 1/2 inch ratchet and just start taking this sucker out. All right, the bolt is now out, and you can see that bolt is pretty gummed up where it wasn't screwed into the stock torsion key. So I'm gonna use that as a stopping point on the new torsion key. And now you could see that even though that bolt is removed, and it was easy to remove, the stock torsion key isn't going anywhere because of that lock. Our next step is going to be to grab our Torsion Key Unloader tool. And if you look at the top here, you'll be able to see a little slot that this tool slides right into. And now with our Torsion Key Unloader tool slid into the proper slot, we can go ahead and hand tighten it down into the little notch on the bottom of this torsion key that is meant for this tool. Okay, so the nut on the end of this torsion key removal tool is a full 1 inch. So that's the size I'll be using. And you just crank it slowly but surely. Not extremely difficult to do. What we're really trying to do here is only crank it enough to be able to get that lock out of there. And let's check and see what we got here. Oh, and the lock just came right out. So now I'm going to slowly relieve the pressure on my torsion key. I can see that thing coming down. Not hard whatsoever. Okay, so when we look closely at our torsion key, all of the pressure has been relieved, but we still got to get this thing out of here. And you might actually have to use a big hammer, and that is because this torsion bar is kind of seized into this torsion key. You know, over time it rusts and just all the pressure and everything in there, you're just going to have to, you know, persuade it. And here you can see my BFH of choice. All right, so with a little persuasion, some WD-40, a BFH, I was able to get that torsion key out. Wasn't that incredibly difficult, to be honest. Here you can see the torsion bar. I just slid it back and out of the way. And this is the space right here that the torsion bar slides through and the torsion key sits. Here is the new Suspension Maxx MAXXCam torsion key, and there is the old one. And you can see their shape is nearly identical. And where the difference comes in is actually with this cog that's within this new MAXXCam key. So what I'm gonna do is line up the inside of this torsion key so you can see just how different it's going to be. Okay, so here with the insides lined up, now you can see the difference. Even though these two torsion keys are nearly identical in shape, this cog is where all the difference comes in. I can actually adjust it where I want. And you can see the difference there. When this is now put in that stock position, it's gonna crank it up quite a bit. If we take a look at these directions that come with the MAXXCam, you can see that for a 99 to 2007, in the B2 position, we're looking at 1.2 inches. Here you can see my MAXXCam is in the B2 position. So 1.2 inches is exactly what I want, hopefully, to get this thing leveled out. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this thing up there and try ever so lightly to get this thing back together without starting to drop stuff. Okay, we have the new torsion key installed, and all I have to do now is reverse the process. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this all the way, slide it up over where it needs to be. Now I'm gonna hand tighten this thing until I can't do it anymore. And now I'm just gonna crank on it to get it up past the point of where the lock goes. Not that difficult at all. Okay, I'm gonna test whether this lock can go in yet. No, it cannot. So we're gonna crank on it some more. Okay, let's try this. And the lock now fits into place exactly where it needs to be. Okay, so now that that lock is in place, we just remove the tension from the torsion key. And last but not least, we're going to insert our bolt back up into that lock. Remember, that was an 18 millimeter. And really all you want to do is get this thing to where it's pushing that cam up just off of that stop. You can fine tune it later. We are fully installed on the passenger side, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it down off of the jack stands and we can take a look and see what we're gonna get so far. Keep in mind that that bolt is still pretty far out compared to where it was with the stock keys. We have a lot of adjustability after we set this thing down on the ground, but you never want to adjust it while it's on the ground. There's just too much force and too much pressure on those keys. Always raise it up off of the ground, make your adjustment with that bolt, and then put it back down on the ground to check your adjustment. Okay, so the vehicle is off the jack stands. We have our jack stands here. We're gonna go ahead and measure using the center line of the tire just like we did before. And without any adjustment at all, you can see we're already up a full inch. That's pretty good. I still have a lot of ways on that bolt. Not that I'm gonna crank it a whole lot, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and get it at about 36.5. That way we can match the rear fender flare. Another thing to note is you're really not gonna get a true measurement here until you take this thing out on a drive and go over some bumps, let the suspension kind of settle a little bit. Then you come back in and remeasure and you'll be able to get the true results. All right, guys, so the job is done. And this side, I'm sitting at about 37 inches, and I think it's looking pretty good. So the only thing left to do is to take this thing out on a test drive. I'm gonna take it around the block, and hopefully I'll be able to hit some bumps to get that suspension moving and let everything kind of settle in. Then I'm gonna come back and remeasure my distances from the ground to the bottom of the fender flare. And if I need to make any minor adjustments, I will. I'm thinking that this 37-inch mark is good. If not, I might drop it down to 36.5. I'll have to see what the back ends up being, because the back does get affected by the front. So I'll have to, like I said, take this on a drive and see where everything settles. Then we'll make some minor adjustments. I just took the Suburban out for a test drive and now I'm back in the garage. Let's go ahead and take some measurements and see where we sit. It looks like we're sitting at about 36 3/4 to my eye. And here at the back passenger wheel, we're sitting at about 36 3/4 also. So these are right on. Okay, so the rear driver's side wheel is about 36 and a half, maybe a little bit less than that. I'm assuming that that might have something to do with fuel in the fuel tank, being that that's on this driver's side. And here on the driver's side front tire, we are looking at about just under 36 and a half. So 36 3/8 about. I think what I'm gonna do is crank this one up to try to match that 36 3/4. Now in order to do that, I'm gonna take the jack the car up again, and then tighten that bolt just a little more. Then I'll drop it down off the jack and then check my progress. Okay, I finally got this figured out. Through numerous attempts to adjust the adjustment screw, driving the car around the block, coming back in, remeasuring, readjusting, driving the car around the block, coming back in, remeasuring, you kind of get the picture. I now have the floor to the bottom of the fender well at 36 5/8 inches all the way around, except for that rear driver's side, which is about just under, like an 1/8 of an inch under 36 5/8. I'm really happy, guys, because I just drove this thing around the block a bunch of times, and while the ride quality is a little more harsh, I can feel, it doesn't seem to be too bad. I had a 1996 GMC Sierra in the past in which I put on some bigger wheels and tires, and they had to crank the torsion bars, and I remember the ride on that thing being absolutely terrible. This thing feels nothing like that. It's just a little more firm than it was before, which might actually be a good thing. Also, to that extent, I'm gonna give you guys a little hint. If you stick around my channel by subscribing, I'm gonna be replacing all the shocks all the way around this thing, as well as the 2 back springs with Bilstein 5100s. I have Bilstein 4600s on my 1995 GMC Suburban, and I love it. The ride quality is much improved over stock. So I figured, hey, on Amazon, Bilsteins aren't that expensive. I'm gonna go ahead and replace all these all the way around. So stick around for that video. It should be coming up soon. All right, guys, well, here we are, the payoff. Look at this thing. This is a 2003 Chevrolet Suburban. It's got about 76,500 miles on it. I bought it from the original owner. After these wheels and tires from a 2018 Chevrolet Suburban, lifting that front up a little bit with these new torsion keys, holy smokes, guys, that thing looks so good. All leveled out, and it just looks great. What an amazing transformation. Something so simple. You know, I usually tend to stay away from upgraded rims and tires. I try to keep my vehicles as stock as possible. I just like the way they came from the factory. Not to mention the fact that your vehicle will sell for so much more if you had to sell it in its stock form. No one likes to buy vehicles that have just been heavily modified with iffy parts. In this case, these rims and tires were from an actual Chevrolet. These are factory rims and tires. They are a little bigger than what came on this vehicle stock, but I honestly think it looks so good. All right, guys, so what do you think? Are you guys digging this as much as I am? We're now sitting at 36 5/8 inches all the way around, except for that driver's side rear, which may be a little bit lower just due to the amount of fuel in the fuel tank, but it's only off like 1/4 of an inch, so I'm not worried about it. But guys, this is my 2003 Suburban, and I just fell in love with it. This thing is awesome. Well, hey guys, if you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it, please give me the thumbs up, hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I will see you in the next video. Don't forget about my Instagram at One Road Garage, and also my website, oneroadgarage.com. All right, guys, peace out.